I think people need to open up and become vulnerable. I can understand that you could be against something, but at least have an understanding of what you're being against. Talk to people. You can still be against something and you can still disagree with it.
Too often, people tie their beliefs so closely to their identity. To not be an anti-gun person anymore is more important than actually understanding why you're anti-gun in the first place. All right, welcome back to another episode of I Didn't Read Your Book. I am your host, Lutch, and today we are going to be talking with another author that I have gotten in contact with through the Tim Pool, Timcast, Cast Castle blog, that whole thing. This book was sent in to Tim Pool, and I just searched for our author, Jared S. Idle, and we connected, and that is what brings us here today. So let's dive right in. And judging the book by its cover, The Serpent of Eden is the name of the book here. It is intriguing because of the symbols, and I don't, Eden and serpent, that makes me think religion. I don't know. We've had a lot of religious talk here, and it's usually gone pretty well. But I'm hoping that it is a little bit bigger than that. And then also, typically when we read the back of the book, that's the synopsis. But here we have this another symbol, which I have no idea what that means. So again, very intrigued. Knowing that he and I have at least some political overlap will definitely lend itself to the type of conversation that I'm looking for. That I can tell just by, if you are a fan of Timcast and Tim Pool, whether you agree with him, whether you agree with me, the idea is that from watching this show, you learn to, if you didn't already know how, to engage ideas in such a way that it doesn't have to be agree with me my way or the highway. It's more than that. And so even if this is another religious based thing, and Jared is another Christian, I don't see that as an issue at all. I am here for it all. I'm here for the conversations, whatever they may be. And just because he's Christian, of course, I still want the same for everything else, for his book to do well and all that good stuff. But again, that is something that we will have to see once we talk to him. So before we do that, let's dive right in and read the back of the book. The chance to be immortalized is a dream people often wonder how to achieve. But when days of slumber have awakened, the digital age fulfills the chance to become immortal with only one video, good or bad. Whether it is for their entertainment or a flaw in society, the entire world is viewed under a microscope, including Max Goodwell. I'm assuming that's the protagonist. Even though he has it all, a successful movie and music career, and the most beautiful girlfriend, Max's actions are not excused from the public eye. He is surrounded by nameless and faceless people who judge his every move. His constant struggle to please his fans worsens when he dreams. Max falls into an unexplainable moonlit world that is conscious of his presence. The environment changes its complexion, permeating thoughts of confusion and trepidation within him. Out of the shadows and into the moonlight, Max comes face to face with a mysterious man, otherwise known as the Serpent of Eden. Based on that, I don't really get too much of a religious feel from it. Just seems to be more of a moniker that is being used. But I'm very interested in this whole dream world thing. I'm wondering if it's a type of story where it's like, we don't know what's real and we're seeing things from Max's perspective, again, assuming he's the protagonist. And then we as readers are set to try to figure out what's real, what's not, and all that kind of stuff. So that could be really cool. I've definitely been very interested in the actual aspect of, you know, lucid dreaming and that kind of stuff. I think it's I've tried to do it, and I've gotten to the place where I can recognize when I am dreaming, but I can't control the dreams. So that's something that is supposed to be a part of it's supposed to be a part of lucid dreaming, to be able to control your dreams. So I haven't been able to do that, but I wonder if that's what we've got here. And I'm very excited to dive into it. So without further ado, let's bring him in. And there he is, Jared S. Idle with the Serpent of Eden. I accidentally called it the Serpent of Evil when we were just talking before. So I find irony in that.
It could be evil in a way, you know, if you start reading it. So yeah, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for coming on. And
thank you for having me.
Not a problem. I'm very interested on a number of different levels. You know, the first thing, obviously, I was talking about how I found you through the Cast Castle blog, and how that is that at least implies some type of political overlap. So that could be very cool. And then, you know, as an atheist reading, Serpent and Eden, maybe that's why I changed it to evil in my mind, but that goes straight to, my mind goes straight to religion. And I was like, all right, let's see what we have here. And I've had Christians on before, and we had great conversations. But upon reading the back of the book, it doesn't seem that that is really too much of a part of it. And it sounds like the Serpent of Eden is more just a figurehead. Is that accurate, or?
Yeah, that would be accurate. When developing it, I had this magical world, and I didn't know what to call it. And I had one antagonist who's basically the devil in the whole series. And I was like, well, I need a world name. So I'm like, why don't you play off of Eden, the Garden of Eden, but make it this very dismal, very, dark presence to it, where all these kind of like demons gather together, but they all have their own little niche and everything. So it was like kind of a nice little playoff. And, when I did a Facebook ad for this, I got so many comments from people, because my tagline is the devil real, and then I got so many comments saying you should grow up and everything else, and can I swear?
Absolutely.
Go fuck yourself, and like you should grow up and stop, all these fairy tales. And then I got the religious people like, yeah, sure, the devil is real and blah blah blah. I'm like, did anybody read the synopsis to this thing, like, or at least clicked on it? And I'm like, wow, I think I struck a nerve with somebody.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I grew up in a Baptist home, and stopped believing in it when I was like 13. I'm now 33. But in the few years ago, getting a little bit more spiritual through like the use of psychedelics and everything, and learning about the Immortality Key, if you ever heard of that book.
I think I've heard of it. I'm not too familiar with it.
Where they use like a type of tryptamine in a ritual back in Greek Roman era. And then when Christians came along around, I might get this wrong, 400 AD, they slaughtered everybody, and then all the texts were ruined.
What was the name of it again?
The Immortality Key. I can't remember the author's name, but yeah, I was like, I'm getting more in touch with like the psychedelic aspect, which the author claims, which was the basis for Christianity. It was a psychedelic. So
going on the whole stoned ape theory, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Like developing conscious, developing religion, and everything else. So anyway, yeah, I'm trying to remember where we went with this. Oh yeah, I got a bunch of like people. I thought it was the title, The Serpent of Eden, was a nice play on words. And I'm like, I might strike a nerve with the Christians, or I might strike a nerve with, people or the atheists, the really hardcore atheists, like the Sam Harrises of the world, or
Right.
the Hitchens of the world.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, as even if they're getting it wrong, they're paying attention, right? So
Yeah,
mission accomplished.
and
Very cool. And so that is strikingly similar to my upbringing. I was brought up in the Catholic Church, and then my parents moved us to a Methodist church when I was in middle school, and it was actually then when I was in a more relaxed environment that I was like, oh, this is cooler than real religion, and because it
yeah,
it wasn't as strict as religion should be if it's going to be religion. Then I was like, oh yeah, we don't actually have to do anything. We can just come here and pretend we're good people. And
yeah,
so I actually remember going to I went to school for psychology, and I was really into philosophy as well, still am. And I remember that I always say I don't remember when I became an atheist, but I remember when in my freshman year of college, I would use AOL Instant Messenger away messages. I would put Bible verses in my away
okay,
messages. And then, so I went into college as a strong believer. And then very shortly after that is when I lost my faith. And then I did become one of those militant atheists. And I think understandably angry, but then you go through that phase and you realize, okay, you maybe even though you have a reason to be angry, the anger isn't helping you. And I
no,
similarly found more spirituality, and my war cry is that religion has a stronghold on spirituality and more specifically the language of spirituality. And so many
mm,
people think that they are spiritual experiences are inherently tied to organized religion. And one of my big things is trying to separate that and be like, guys, we don't need all the bad stuff. We can just keep the good stuff and stop calling it religion,
oh
stop calling
yeah,
it God, and we most of us agree on what we're talking about anyway. It all becomes semantic and all that stuff. And then I think that the world would be an amazing place if everybody would at least take acid one time. I think it's
yes,
something that
yes,
just opens up a door in your mind that you never knew was there. And it sounds so cliche because it's so hard to explain, but it's just one of
it,
those things that I think everybody needs to do.
yeah, it's like something to do. Because I mean, I even really, I took like a half an eighth of mushrooms. Didn't really get to see much. Took acid. Didn't really get to see much. But it's like the feeling inside of it. You open yourself. You become vulnerable and open yourself up to something new, something different. And I agree with you. The fundamental principles that religion has, like be kind, blah blah blah, all this and that. You can apply that without religion. So I
Exactly.
think, yeah, yeah. So you can, apply that without it. And to me, the Bible gives shame in a way, like just shaming.
In
But
many ways.
yes, and I've been listening to Dr. Jordan Peterson a little bit on some of the Bible verses, like his interpretation of it, and it's kind of really fascinating to open it up. I think they take the text literally instead of psychologically.
Well, and I definitely agree with you, and I'm a big fan of Peterson. Um, and part of bringing it back to me, the whole religious language thing is that yeah, Peterson takes the Bible stories and stuff like that, and uses the value of the lesson and not so
Hmm.
much about the explicit text, which I think is a good thing. However, that is not really what the religion was meant to do. It was meant to be the word of God. And so straying away
Yeah.
from that is not really the religion. And again, while that's a good thing, we want we want to stray away from believing that this is an inherent word of God. But then it just turns into again, a semantic thing about, well, what is God? And well, God is just love. And it's like, no, God, in the Bible, God is
Yeah,
Yahweh, and so if you don't believe
yeah,
that, and you don't believe He sent His Son to earth to be killed for sin, all that stuff, then you're not really a Christian. But I think for right now, when I was in my militant atheist stage, a lot of the religious impact on society was a lot more prominent than it is now. And I think that I part of, I don't know if they're directly related. I think it's just the way that it happened in growing up. But I no longer see like the Christian right as such a big threat to our way of
no,
life. And now it's become the opposite, and it's the far
yeah.
left that is using their ideology to create havoc. And I've long been saying that I think leftism, wokeism, whatever you want to call it, is
Hmm.
a religion. It's and it's not even a
Oh yeah, it's
godless.
a cult.
Yeah, it's not even a godless religion.
Yeah.
They view their figureheads as gods, and it's not everyone, of course, but generally speaking,
Yeah.
the sentiment is that what they say goes. There is the in group and the out group, all of this stuff, from whether you call it a when, whether you call it a cult, I might call them cunts, but whether you call it a cult or a religion, they exhibit all of those features, and so it's very
Oh,
interesting.
definitely.
So, but
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Go ahead.
well, no, I was just gonna ask
Oh,
for your thoughts politically before we dive into the book specifically. That's kind of where I stand, and obviously being a fan of Tim's and Timcast, that is a heavy influence on me. And so I'm just curious, how closely do you follow Tim? And how much do you agree or disagree? Where, or, what kind of political stuff are you do you align yourself with?
politically, I kind of view myself as center, maybe center libertarian. I do follow Tim. I do follow Steven Crowder. And that's probably about it, because Steven seems reasonable as a conservative. I don't agree with certain aspects, having the Bible in here and there, and I'm like, okay. I whoever makes the most sense to me, I believe so. I don't like to pick sides, because that results in a tribalism, fighting amongst your neighbors. Oh, you like Trump, go fuck yourself. Oh, you like Biden, go fuck yourself. I'm like, all right, well,
Where does that leave us?
yeah, we're at a crossroads here. We're not speaking to one another. I've been following Tim since last year, during all the city riots that were going on and everything. And
The peaceful
I
protests, right?
yeah, peaceful protests. It's there's fire in the background. Oh, peaceful protest. And roast some marshmallows over there. Okay, they're doing fine. It's a campfire. And I just got in tune with him. I watch him almost daily. Watch his podcast. Same with Crowder. I try to get like both worlds of the political spectrum. And the one certain things I do agree with. I like conservative values. I like parents in the home and everything. Raised by a single mom when I was 13. You can honestly tell the difference between a 2-parent household and a 1-parent household. And that's why I agree on conservatives, because it could lead to success or it could lead to downfall, because you don't have that strong male role model and you don't have a strong female role model. You just have one or the other.
Right.
And that's something I agree with conservatives. I
So are
agree with
you
the
so are you would you say that you're not necessarily too deep in the weeds, but that you do care about these things enough to keep up to date on them? Is that
oh
accurate?
oh that's accurate.
Because
Yeah.
I mean, I also good.
No, go ahead.
I also follow, Tim is kind of my main guy. I think I've been following him since he was in Sweden. I think maybe like, I don't know, maybe around 2014, 2015, when he was still doing like on the ground stuff. So one, the fact that I've been following him for a long time, and he was always, the center left milquetoast fence sitter, and now
Yeah.
he pretty much aligns with what people are calling the new conservatives. And that change has not really been a result, in my estimation, of his values specifically changing. He's of course taken in new information, again, specifically the gun stuff. But I don't think that Tim has gone from thinking these things to now thinking these things.
Oh,
I think he's pretty much, and I would put myself in the same category, that he's pretty much been in the same center, just rational sphere, and everything else around us has shifted. So Tim is Tim is the main guy for me. Like, I listen to the podcast from the night before every morning when I'm in the car. I do like Crowder, but it's very clear that he is not pandering. That's a derogatory thing, because I do think he is absolutely reasonable in his conclusions, but the way he presents himself, it's clearly not for bringing in new people. I think Crowder is,
true.
if you already agree with Crowder, then you're going to enjoy his content, and if you don't, then you're not. But that being said, even though you're going in kind of knowing what kind of take he's going to have,
Oh, yeah.
it's about the information that he presents, which you're not finding in other places. And so I also like to supplement, that clearly conservative type of talk with people like Kyle Kalinske, Secular Talk, Sagar and Crystal with Breaking Points. I'll check in with Jimmy Dore every now and then. Same kind of thing. I like to have an array of different voices, not only so that I can get the best picture of what's going on that I can, but also to see what other people are saying. Like another one of my favorite creators is Actual Justice Warrior, Sean Fitzgerald. If you're not familiar with him, you would definitely love him. He's got a criminal law background, and so like he just put out a video last night about the Julius Jones case. Apparently, Julius Jones murdered some dude in '99, and it's coming to a head.
Oh, damn.
And the Innocence Project, which again, if for anyone who's not familiar, is a nonprofit organization that is meant to help innocent people get exonerated who are on death row. And it's typically people who, like would be in for murder or not many other things will get you on death row. But from the time before we had DNA evidence. And so they will, use the money to go and exonerate these people. But apparently, according to this Actual Justice Warrior video, they are, they put out this documentary about Julius Jones with the family and all that stuff. And it's really trying to push a narrative. And it's just another example of how this black and white, that's not a good way to put it, but this either or ideology has crept into everything. And
definitely.
it's just it's terrible, because I don't want to feel like I have to take sides. And
me either.
It's getting to the point where not taking a side is the side.
Yeah.
The leftists will have their ideology, and you can either buy into it or now you're the other.
Oh, yeah. I totally agree with you. You can find that on the left and the right, where they kind of don't really understand centrists or moderates, whatever you want to call them. And that's how I feel. I think there's a reasonable solution with A and B, and somehow try to compromise between the two. Like for example, in abortion, I kind of believe in it to an extent if there's medical or if she got raped, but as a contraceptive, no. I don't agree with that, because what one of my friends told me a story. This is going back probably 12 years. He got a girl knocked up. They went and got one, and she told him that was my third one. And I was like, all right, that kind of like, I pedal back
Red
a little
flags,
bit.
Raven, red flags.
Yeah. So it's kind of, I think there's a compromise with that issue, that the right, like, no, we shouldn't have any. I'm like, well, what about like a medical condition? That baby's not going to survive outside the womb. So something like that, I think there needs to be at least a balance. And I think that's where kind of like a centrist or a moderate would come in. And I'm like, okay, I want to hear you. I want to hear you. Let's try to make this reasonable.
Yeah, and I think nuance is something that's so lost. And again, another great YouTuber is Nuance Bro, and that's his whole thing, is adding.
I actually
nuance.
heard of him.
He's great. He actually just put out a video on the whole Alec Baldwin thing. And, most people wanted to, in news and journalism and, whatever you want to call it on YouTube, it's, in that, I don't know if you call it journal, whatever you want to call it, being the first to break a story or comment on it or whatever is obviously going to get you the clicks and everything. But his video came out a few days after they not only the incident, but then we got more information, and then he made Baldwin made a statement. And so Nuance Bro waited to gather all of this information. And again, as somebody who doesn't really know guns that well, I was very curious as to the details, because outside of this, I have that's one of the positions that I recently have changed on. And I used to be super anti-gun, and then I just realized I wasn't anti-gun. I just didn't know anything about guns.
Yeah.
And like, I was one of the people who thought that the semi-automatic meant like the burst, like bah, 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 like in Call of Duty or something. Just so everybody knows, semi-automatic means one press of the trigger, one bullet. That's it. Basically, every gun ever.
I think there needs, I understand, because I was kind of like that too. Or I was like, why don't we just adopt like England does and just get rid of them, but then you open up the door for something else. And as soon as I started working on my job and started actually, and I think this is what goes wrong with anti-gun people, you don't talk to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
You just get like second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand news info. And then you're completely ignorant, and then you're like, and just you're waving signs at stupid protests.
Wrong and strong. And we mentioned it before, but what is it that you do for work? For the viewers?
I actually work for a gun manufacturer outside of Harrisburg, PA.
Cool.
I shipping department, everything, and I'm not to the T of an enthusiast. I do like to fire once in a while, shoot once in a while, but I'll talk to some of these people, and I'm like, I have no clue what the hell you're saying, man. Like, I just, it's kind of like drums. If I hear something and it feels good, I'm just gonna buy it and not know what it is. I have that little personality of mine where I'm just like, oh, that sounds good. Let's, I don't care what it's made of or what it,
Right. We can see like the reflection of your nice little jump set in your glasses. Yes. I like it.
Oh, thank you.
And definitely, I think that you hit on something important, because the humility to understand that you don't know what you don't know is something that I think is lost on a lot of liberals. And I can say that because I was one of them. I had these strong opinions about guns, and like I said, like, oh, why would you ever need this kind of gun? Why would you ever need that? Like, oh, you think you're gonna fight the whole army and they have nukes? And like, these are day one level arguments that if you actually care about getting the answers, they're there and they're very simple. But people just don't want them. They want to be right, and they want to just press their ideology regardless of you know, what the reality of the situation is.
I think, and you're correct on that. I think people need to open up and become vulnerable and try not to let their emotions basically run wild, and at least not try to convince them, but make them like understand. I can understand that you could be against something, but at least have an understanding of what you're being against. Like an
Right.
AR is not an assault rifle, it's not an automatic rifle, it's an Armalite rifle. You
Yeah.
know, at
Yeah.
least have
Same.
the basic knowledge of it. You know, and talk to people. You can still be against something and you still disagree with it, but just have like an understanding. And people with that particular mindset just don't want to do that. They don't want to open
Mhm.
themselves up, become vulnerable, become, you know, have their emotions being attacked or whatever. I'm trying to think of the right words, but yeah,
Well, that's a good point too, because I think too often people tie their beliefs, whether you know, their political beliefs, among others, they tie them so closely to their identity that
Mhm.
if you're an anti-gun, like if you don't agree with guns, then you're an anti-gun person. And so to learn about these things would would fly in the face of that, and to not be an anti-gun person anymore is more important than actually understanding why you're anti-gun in the first place.
Yeah.
And it's all back. So sorry to interrupt your podcast experience. I just want to remind you, if you're enjoying what you're watching, please hit the like button and subscribe for more content. And if you really love it, there's some support links in the description. I would love if you could help out the channel. And back to the show. It's not a good thing.
It's all manipulation. And, you know, as soon as people start waking up and start uh, talking to each other, not typing away and on a
Talking at
screen
each
that
other, right?
yes, on a screen that, you know, where you can't hear the person's emotions, the person's
Mhm.
voice. And I think social media kind of like dismantled the personal conversation like you and I are having.
So we're bringing back, baby.
And to go back, yeah, with Tim Pool, I was watching one of his cast castles, and he's like, "Hey, if you want to send me something, I'm into horror books." And I'm like, "All right," you know. I was like, "I'll send this one to you," and got the idea of sending one of our the company that I work for his catalogs, because I knew he was into guns. I'm like, "All right, that's a win-win. It's a win for me. It's a win for the company."
Nice,
So,
nice.
so yeah, I was like, whether he reads it or not is not the. I mean, I would like for him to read it, but if he doesn't, I'm like, that's still pretty cool. I spent $3 on 25,000 people looking at my book. You know,
Exactly.
that's
And you know, I'm a relatively small channel, but hopefully people, you know, we do have a lot of plans, and you know, when people look back, they will have this conversation and hopefully pick up your book.
oh
Um so
oh
so
definitely.
so going back to the book itself, so it is a horror story,
Yes.
and obviously fiction. So what you know, we read that Max Goodall,
Goodwill. Yep.
Max Goodwell, you know, he's got this seemingly great life, movies, music, hot girl, and then when he goes to sleep, he is thrust into this other world. So
Yeah.
what exactly happens to him when he falls asleep?
I mean, it's been a while since I kind of looked at it. So yeah, he throughout beforehand, he starts seeing gets all these weird experiences, and this goes back to the symbol too that's on the back of the book. He actually sees a oh man, I'm gonna forget the shape, the hexagon, and it starts going further down. And when he gets into the dream sequence, he enters this world completely unknown. There's a full moon, trees all around. There seems to be no escape, and all this trickery just starts happening to him. And the man in black, who basically is the antagonist out of the whole thing, is trying to get to Max and make him remember something that he did a long time ago that I still have yet to figure out, because this might be in 3 to 4 parts.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So he, after his dreams and everything and showing him all this stuff, he starts hallucinating, and that's when he kind of goes from the protagonist of being a normal, simple guy to just going just further down after experiencing this one dream, getting, you know, hooked on to drugs, starts being violent to people, and he doesn't know why until he kind of remembers in a later sequence.
And so when I was reading, I got I was thinking along the lines of lucid dreaming. Are you familiar with the concept of
Yes.
lucid? So
Yep.
you know, I've personally you know, I've been able to you know, I've always wanted to be able to do that and be able to get into my dreams and control what's going on. And so I looked up a bunch of different ways to practice, and I've gotten to the point where I can recognize when I'm in dreams, but
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason, my brain will that's where it stops. Like I can recognize that I'm in a dream, and I'll be like, oh, this is definitely a dream, but I can't control things. So I haven't really practiced that hard, but I can have some
Oh,
vivid ass dreams.
yeah. Oh, same here. You know, I always tell everybody this one story. I remember being in a room with dark purple carpet, bright purple walls. I watched a snake slither into a lizard, and then I see a toad vibrating in the corner. And I picked it up, and I could see all these colors just going up my arm at lightning speed, and boom, and then I wake up, and I woke up. I woke up my friend, and I'm like, what the hell was that? And I could, you know, and I kind of pinpoint where the toad came from. It was from a Futurama episode with the Hypno Toad. Like that, I'm like, wow, that was like a vivid dream, and I'll never like forget it. But sometimes, you know, you can tap into the lucid dreaming. Like, I don't know if you ever had this experience, like that you have to go to the bathroom, and you're like, oh shit, and you wake yourself up like you are that you're about to go in your sleep, and you're kind of conscious. I'm like, shit, I gotta wake up and go to the bathroom. So there's a few of them where I kind of tapped into like a little bit, but that's always something like I always wanted to do, like learn how to control like dreaming. And I
Yeah,
know
that
they were kind of working on something for that, like some sort of headset. I don't know how far they got developed with that though. I don't know who was making it though. I'm like, man, if that goes on the market, I don't give a shit how much money it is. I would buy that.
Yeah, fuck the Oculus. I want to,
Yeah.
you know, my dreams are better than your video game. I guarantee you. So very cool. Um, and so I guess so you said this is going to be 3 to 4 pieces in the series.
Correct.
How much have you written so far?
Uh, I started this project back in January 2015, and I think I wrapped it up around 2017, 2018, and I actually wrote 618 pages flat out. When I was trying to go through a publisher, which I eventually just dropped and did self-publishing through Amazon, he was like, do you think about breaking this up? I'm like, no. And then I, you know, kind of started thinking about it a little bit more. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. And so, um,
So
oh man,
do you have the whole story written, and it's just a
oh
matter of
yeah,
how? Oh, okay, so you've got the
yeah,
whole story written, and it's just a matter of how you're going to release it.
yes,
So
yeah. With the next one I'm currently writing, I had to tweak it a little bit because I introduced there's an unknown character. I like to put a little bit of hidden messages in mine, kind of like you see in movie, you see an image. I'm like, all right, you don't pay attention to that, and then further down the movie, it, you know, comes to light.
comes back, yeah.
And so I have this one character, and for a while I'm like, what the hell are you doing there? And then I'm like, I think I need to rewrite this just a little bit. So it's almost, the story's kind of the same, but it's almost rewritten to fit it nicely, make it make sense in a way, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
So
So-
yeah, go ahead.
So is the Serpent of Eden that the whole thing published, and now you're looking to go back and break that up?
The Serpent of Eden is currently the first one of the series. You read the life of Max and how good it is and how humble he is, and then he just starts, bugging out and starts hallucinating and everything else. And then the further down the series, you can just see how much the Man in Black has effect on him. I don't want to spoil any of the second one, but you can see how he kind of manipulates a person to do whatever he wants. Then you're just in the Serpent, you're just following him go be batshit and crazy.
Cool. That's
And yeah,
very,
yeah.
very nice.
It,
Very cool. So what have you always been a horror fan, or was the idea for the story what made you want to do this? Is it something that came from your personal experience? How did this come to be?
it I to be honest, I never really read that many books. I was more into like sociology stuff, like the one I mentioned earlier, the Immortality Key, or some of Hitchens stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And
Same
I,
thing. Welcome to the
I
platform.
yeah, I was always into like horror films growing up, and wanting to create like characters and being immersed into it and having emotion to it. The one that got me basically into horror movies is John Carpenter's 1978 Halloween. I thought that was so brilliant, and it like scared the living shit out of me. And as a kid, yeah, you just have this creepy white mask dude and everything else. And I'm like, it was so atmospheric. And I'm like, that's how a horror should look like. You create a little bit of drama, you create a little bit of tension, and then the blood and guts just come last. And so
Definitely.
and I always search for them type of movies. So when this idea came, I didn't really have the intention to write it. It's just kind of dawned on me. My buddy and I, Josh, my best friend, who's also a musician, and we were just, smoking weed and just making fun of stuff on the television one day. And it was quite funny when Justin Bieber got in trouble.
Mm.
So we would, joust back and forth with a bunch of ideas. He's like, wonder if he goes to the military, learns all these military secrets. I'm like, yeah, what if he gets all these believers and he starts being like the next Adolf Hitler? And I'm like, we were just going nuts with it.
That'd be
And
crazy.
and then that was in December, and I kept just thinking about it. I'm like, what about an actor that just goes completely insane? Okay. And then somehow my sociology professor from about 6 years prior, she's like, you should really write for a living. And I'm like, nah, I don't want to be an alcoholic. Just like nudge, like, and she's like, no, you're pretty good. I'm like, well, thank you. And the more I thought about this idea, the more she got in my head. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take a chance on myself. I'm going to do something because I've always written poetry and everything. On my little channel, I have a 9-video series about one's addiction with the digital world, social media, and everything else.
What's your channel called?
The Other Eye.
The Other Eye.
No, I actually did change it because I wanted to make a platform where people could come on and say what they want. And then I'm like, I couldn't get too driven, and I got the only videos I have about it is from last year, and I can't seem to make time to do any other work. I write, I drum, I do art, and I'm like, trying to make content is like really, really hard.
Mm-hmm. It
And
definitely is.
So it was a really big step, and I put a lot of thought into it. There's the word smile in it, and if you smile so many times, you start feeling happy. I'm like, what if I can make that a manipulative tool? And I'm like, we'll just keep that on there. And I did put one personal experience into it. I can't. I wish I could know what chapter it was, but Max is in between a dream and reality. Almost, if anybody has ever experienced a sleep
Sleep
paralysis
paralysis.
episode. So all the added features that are into it, like a full moon, blah blah blah, this and that, welts and blisters. I was just laying there and I couldn't move. I really couldn't move. I started crying. I watched my closet door pan in and out, and then it just opened up, and this shadow figure just came directly at me, came around the side where I was sleeping, and I seen a knife in his hand right into my chest. And then the alarm went off, and I kind of started moving again.
That's crazy.
And I'm like, oh, I was so like mind fucked that whole day at work, and I needed to see. And I'm like, hey, let's give it to Max. Let's torture him.
So let me, if I can, ask you a little bit more about that, because I'm familiar with the phenomenon of sleep paralysis, and I've never experienced it personally. But I have, obviously that's, the understanding why that would be a scary experience is not hard, but for people, like, if it happens one time, I would understand why that's like, holy shit, this is terrifying. But the closest thing in my mind is having a bad trip on shrooms or acid or something, and I almost kind of I look for the bad trips these days.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say I'm like I mean, I do like to refer to myself as a psychonaut, but I've maybe done 20 trips over the course of my life, and most of those weren't like hard trips. It's just like drop a tab and hang out and watch cartoon movies with friends or something. But the first time I did it, I was in college, and I was I had just moved into a new house with a bunch of other people, and they were having a party, and we dropped, and there was like 20 people there, all just tripping balls. Some people were on ecstasy as well. It was a madhouse. It's come to be known as the funny farm. And I was I think it was like 10 days after I'd moved in, and I would just be going, like, each room would have like different lighting, different music, and it was really cool. But I got to a point where I was like, are these people real? Am I I'm not sure if this is real. I think I'm stuck in this, like, this something. And I had to go in the basement and call my friend and be like, dude, I think I'm stuck in, and he was able to talk me down. But that level of fear is something that I probably have never experienced in my life. And knowing that in hindsight, that obviously I was fine, and the coming out the other side of a bad trip is one of the most empowering feelings, I think. And just to be like, wow, I did that. I went through that. And it's again, that once you, and again, that was my second trip. But it's something that I think with, a lot of drugs, where you start chasing the dragon. And once you kind of figure out how to navigate that plane of existence, then, it's a little bit harder to get lost in the sauce, and a little bit harder to have those really deep awakening experiences. And even though, I think every trip has something that it's offered me in the short term or the medium to long term, it's those bad trips that really allow you to hold a mirror up to yourself, and in a safe way, explore these dark aspects of yourself, or maybe not even that dark, but just something that you've been avoiding. And that doesn't necessarily happen when you're just happy and fun. You're like, ooh, look at the colors,
Yeah.
And so bringing it back to the sleep paralysis, I wonder how if it's something that happens with some sort of regularity. Is there a level of that kind of understanding how to navigate that you're like, okay, I recognize this. Obviously, there's no shadow creatures. I'm experiencing this. I can see it with my own eyes. I can't move, and I'm clearly not sleeping, but I know what's going on here, and I'm able to overcome that. I'm wondering why that is not again, if it's a one-time thing, that's different, but for people who it happens all the time, I'm wondering why it continues to be such a terrifying experience.
I mean, that's a good question. I wouldn't know. It only happened to me once. I think it, I don't know, just assuming it would be like a chemical imbalance of somehow you're somehow in a dream state but in like reality at the same time. It's really hard to explain if you're not like there, kind of like an acid trip. You explain someone what acid is, I'm like, it has to happen.
You gotta be there, bro.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can understand that, because I will, like, if I don't I think the number one thing that will cause nightmares is if it's too hot when I go to sleep. Like, I always run cold at night. I need it to be like freezing. But
oh wow.
I always have some type of dream around because I'm a recovering addict from other stuff too. I used to be into pills, and I had an alcoholic stage and all that. And I'm not sober, but I don't feel the need to be, and I don't have those issues anymore. But I always, whenever my go-to nightmare, or my brain's go-to nightmare, is some iteration of you're getting arrested or you're just getting arrested. Somebody found your drugs, or a combination of the two. And I can understand that. I'm going back to the lucid dreaming thing, that even though these are maybe not necessarily reoccurring dreams, but they're the same type of dream. And I know that I'm not doing these types of things. And I've been getting better at being able to say, like, no, I definitely didn't do anything wrong before I went to sleep. So this is clearly a dream.
Yeah.
But it's still harrowing while I'm going through it. And so I suppose the sleep paralysis would be an extension of that same thing. But again, I think the question for me is just, it seems like at a certain point you'd be able to recognize in the same way with the lucid dreaming that, over time I'm getting better at being like, okay, I can't control what's going on here, but I know this isn't real. So let me just sit and wait to get processed, and I'll sit in this cell, or I'll try to convince my family that I didn't know where these drugs came from, but because I'm there in the scene, but also knowing that it's not real. So I guess I can see that.
I mean, I could probably see your divers are coming maybe from repressed thoughts, or maybe, not to be like a therapist for you, it could be repressed thoughts, or a disappointment to loved ones or something, and it just keeps recurring and recurring for some reason until like there's some weird resolution. And I used to get that way with like smoking weed, and I had these really repressed thoughts. I'm like, oh shit, I did this to this person, I said the wrong things, and blah blah blah. And it's almost like a way of trying to make amends. And I think whatever happens in reality can manifest into a dreamlike state. And I'm like, hey, this is still going on. I think there needs to be some type of resolution. And I really don't know what will cause sleep paralysis. I remember just being there and just looking up, and I can only shift my head just a little bit. And I'm like, all right, I can't move my arms. I can move my eyes and a little bit of my head. and I hear my alarm going off, and I can't move until the knife thrust into my chest, and I could feel like these chains just, being pulled away from me. And then I swung my arm over and then turned it
Broke the
off.
alarm clock.
Yeah, and turned it off. And I'm like, and I was like, wow, what the fuck was that? Like, I just broke down and cried. My wife came in. She says, "What's the matter?" I'm like, I don't know what I experienced. This is so weird. Because I did, going back to the Purple Room and the Hypnotoad, like I experienced these lucid dreamings, but nothing like this. I don't know if paralysis is like a nightmare version of it. Like it just seems so weird. And so when I had that episode, I'm like, I'm gonna give that to Max because he needs something done to him. And
may as well put it to good use.
Yeah, so there's a little bit into the book. The characters are kind of Max is basically a first name I won to name my first child if I ever had one. Laurie in the book, she's named after Laurie Strode from Jamie Lee Curtis's character from Halloween.
Oh, nice.
And her last name's Heather Langenkamp's last name, Nancy Thomas, the one who
Sorry,
fights
you cut
Freddy.
out there. Her last name. Her last name was what?
Thompson is taken from Heather's character from A Nightmare on Elm Street. So
cool.
And
so those are definitely Easter eggs that horror fans will definitely be able to pick up on. I think it's not too subtle, and it's also not too on the nose, which is always what you look for with that kind of fan service, so to speak. Cool. So I think trying to figure out how to word this. The resolution that Max is after, is this is that similar to kind of what we were just talking about in the sense that, he's got this great life, he's got, everything's going well for him, but that there's something that he's not addressing, and this dream world is a way of bringing that to his awareness, or is there some sort of outside factor that's causing this to happen to him completely unrelated?
I wouldn't say there's like it would be personal or anything. It was just kind of like just a play on a bunch of stuff. If it gives someone a little motivation or a little inspiration, that's kind of cool with me. Like I never intended or put any, I wouldn't say put any thought or feeling into it. I put a lot of thought and feeling into it, but I never had like, oh, the moral of the story is, there'll be an asshole or something, you know what I mean? And
good.
And it was just kind of like, how can I tell a story and put all these elements together, like, having the boogeyman of Michael Myers, having the nightmare warrior of Freddy, and try to tie that in with, since you're a musician, you probably know Robert Johnson. You've heard of Robert Johnson.
Yeah.
So the story of the Crossroads. What if you sell your soul to the devil? So that's kind of like the premise of it. What if you sell your soul to the devil and you're just watching this unfold? So I mean, there could be a moral, like, I didn't put that kind of thought into it, but if people find it to like, oh man, this is really cool, and like I can apply this, to certain aspects of my life, don't do this, don't do that, that would be cool with me, but I never look for like one of those South Park moments. You know what I've learned today?
I learned today.
Yeah.
So with that being said, then, if there's not a direct message that you're trying to convey with this story, if there was one thing that you would hope somebody would take away from the story, whether it be a moral or just a thought, a different way of looking at society, looking at dream, what is one thing that you think that people could benefit from, aside from the sheer entertainment of the story?
Um, I would say keep your head straight, keep your ego in check. You can get really above yourself, and you start spiraling in a weird way where it's violence or drugs or anything else, which happens to Max. There's all these little cute little things when I started writing it, and I'm like, well, there's an opiate epidemic, let's put that in there. Like, he gets a drug addiction, he starts neglecting his girlfriend and everything else. So there could be a moral. Really, I pictured Max to be just humble, and then all of a sudden he just starts bugging out. So I could see it as checking your ego, keep your head straight. Don't let the side of internet fame take you and just kind of ruin you, and you become this narcissist.
Do it all for the clout.
Yeah, do it all for the work. When I get a little praise for the book from people that I knew that bought the book and everything, they're like, wow, that's really an interesting story. And I just be humble, and I'm like, thank you. I guess, I try not to let it's like, yeah, I wrote a fucking great ass book, you're damn right at it. I try not to be that type of person. Like, yeah, I guess you could say, keep your ego in check, keep pushing, and try not to fall into oblivion.
Well, I mean, it definitely sounds like a very interesting story. So I think if people who have read it are telling you so, I would definitely believe them.
Even people who don't even really read the genre, they're like, wow, that's kind of interesting, and they picked it up and they're like, yo, you did a good job on this. I'm like, I try not to go overboard. I like the drama and the intensity, creating emotion, and then the violence and the horror kind of come like in between that, where I think and the other one is try to get Max over that hump and become an antagonist. And it's like, well, how do you become an antagonist these days? I'm like, all right, well, let's do this and that will get people upset, which I think is a lost art today. Is having a convincing antagonist. And I'm like, well, how do you do that? I'm like, well, let's look at the world around us. Let's look at wokeism. Let's look at, religion. Let's not try to cram everything, but try to take elements of a religious right or the wokest left, and let's see if I could blend them together. And I'm like, and hate this person over there. this person over here hates me, and this person over here hates me. And I'm like, all right, I guess I'm kind of doing that correctly.
Doing something right.
Yeah, like, it was really challenging, and it was quite nice. And the current project, which is the second half of this, I got better at writing, better at storytelling. It's practically not the same, but it creates more emotion. I like the drama into it, and all the violence and the mayhem is in the background, and it all comes to head at appropriate points, instead of like, there's a person over there, let's stab them, stuff like that.
So that brings up a curiosity of what type. I mean, you've mentioned a lot of the classics like the Halloween and Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. But I'm interested in what type of horror movies are up your alley, like, because I forget what the context was. There was something that just came out on Netflix that was I can't remember. I don't know. There was something that was in that realm, and Matt Walsh from the Daily Wire was like, this is why I'm not going to watch this thing, and why you shouldn't either. And it was this whole thing about like, oh, this is just gore porn. And he referenced the days of like the Saw movies and Hostel, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we all remember the big rise in violence after those movies came out. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
I'm not really a huge horror movie fan because of the things that you're talking about, that a lot of horror movies these days are just about creating those in the moment experiences and the jump scares rather than creating a truly scary story.
Oh, I
And
agree.
like I remember the last, maybe not the last, but one of the last movies before I started realizing that this was a pattern was when The Ring came out. And that,
Yeah.
it was visually, it was great in terms of not only what had been done before in that realm, and like the girl crawling out of the TV haunted my nightmares for
Yeah.
a while. I mean, mind you, I was also what, like 10, 11 years old at the time. But since then, I used to love watching that kind of stuff. And I find myself now making a very clear distinction between a thriller and a horror flick. And
Hmm.
I think of horror flicks as more of just Insidious, or the paranormal stuff, and
Yeah.
it just which really doesn't do it for me. But um, First first thing that comes to mind is Gone Girl. That would be considered a thriller, definitely not horror, but the story of that is much more horrifying to me than, oh, there's a ghost in the house. So what kind of movies are you into, or what are some of your favorite and least favorite? Well, so like for starters, how do you feel about the Hostel films?
It that's not even. I mean, they're real things, but they're not really on film. They're not really that scary. It's just like, all right, you're getting tortured for 2 hours. That's you didn't create a suspense. You didn't create anything. You just jumped right in and just boop. Oh, there's your tongue through it. So I always like Hitchcock's philosophy. It's not the bang that scares you, it's the anticipation of the bang that scares you. Because then your
Mm.
heart's like racing and racing. I think horror can be applied to like most things. I don't think it has to be that graphic. It has to be. I mean, if you look at different time periods, like the monster movies, the werewolves, and everything else, uh, uh, my favorite time period is the '70s because it really looks like the wild west in terms of like what can we get away with. Like Last House on the Left is not necessarily a monster movie. It's a movie that these two girls get captured, drugged, and get raped and left for dead. And it's like,
Did they make a remake of that?
yeah.
I saw the remake.
And like the original Craven movie, I'm like, I act by that. Some people just don't like that. They like the monsters, the exorcists, the boogeymans. And I'm like, something that could be hit close to home where it can it it can affect you in real life, like that can happen, I think is the most scariest. And more recent films, like you said, the paranormals and all this like jump scares, they don't really do anything.
Right.
It not much thought into it. And then Ari Aster came along and blew my mind away with Hereditary. And
That
you
was
could,
absolutely. I
yeah.
love that movie. That was one of
and,
the.
and
I was trying to think of something specifically like Hereditary. That's the perfect example of
yeah.
a more contemporary horror movie that worked for me. And it is about the ghosts and spirits and all this supernatural paranormal stuff. But there was a story there. There was substance to it.
Oh yeah.
I'm so glad you brought
you
that
you
up.
you got to feel the family's dread and everything else that goes with it, and it just makes you kind of feel like uncomfortable. And I think that's how I approach the book is, let's find a way to make you feel uncomfortable, because that's how I like to be scared. I like to just kind of like, all right, what am I watching here, or in this case, what am I reading here, like not trying to go crazy and overboard with it. I think Hereditary or his other film Midsummer is a perfect example of like building tension, getting the invest into people, and then just slowly creep in some stuff and just like.
I'm so
And
Glenn, again, I'm so glad you brought up Midsummer, because I was not really well. I saw Midsummer, not right away, and so I was aware of the buzz, and it being called a horror movie. I had certain expectations going in, and for those of you who haven't seen it, it's not a typical horror movie. And it is more about that situational horror rather than the jump scare. And so I thought it was really well done, but I found it a little bit kind of boring.
mhm.
And the overall plot, the overall story, like that aspect of it, like the synopsis, I would say yes, that's terrifying. But the experience of watching it, I felt more. It felt almost like I was watching someone else be scared more than in Hereditary, where the blending of I forget what they call it, but like when you forget that you're watching something and you're just you're in it. Whatever it's called. That was much
Yeah.
more in Hereditary than in Midsummer. But that being said, I would much rather watch a movie like Midsummer than the next Paranormal Activity,
Oh
because
yeah.
there's a story there.
And I think the misconception about horror, you look at old horrors like the old Draculas and even up to the 60s with Rosemary's Baby, you probably wouldn't even consider that horror, but that is a horror movie. And then you go to 70s. I think horror got very if the word is diluted
Mhm.
from all the like capitalized on Halloween, like the Friday the 13th and Crazy
Freddy.
Train and all these holidays that let's say were gore, and the over the top violence was the scary part of it. And I kind of like, no, that's not the scary part. You watch, Psycho, and that's just scary because you're watching a guy transform into his mom, become crazy, spying on women. That I think having a reality aspect is more terrifying than like a Hostel or a Saw. Like, come on, man, that's never gonna happen to you in real life.
Good.
Yeah.
So then let me bringing it to a couple of more current things. Have you seen Squid Game?
No.
Oh,
I
I would
I
love
yeah,
to know what you think of it.
I I I have a hard time sitting down and watching anything. I think the most recent series I'm actually into is the Child's Play series, Chucky, that's on Sci-Fi and the USA Network.
Mm. Well, I haven't had cable
I
in years, so if it's not on
Yeah.
if it's not on online somewhere or on a streaming service, I'm probably not aware of it. That I think you would love it. It is that type of the exact type of thing that we're talking about, where it does have gore, it does have a lot of that, but the scariness of it comes from the story and how well they go from just this very normal situation and ramp it up in a way that doesn't seem so forced. And it's not perfect, but
Mhm.
I think they did a really good job with it. And again, it's not a perfect 10 out of 10, but on the aspects that we're specifically talking about and creating that tension and fear from the situational awareness of what's at stake and things like that. That's really cool. And then in that same vein, are you familiar with the HBO show Succession?
No.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
another one that I think you would like, and that has nothing to do with horror, but it does the same type of thing for what it is. I mean, it's just about this rich family who owns a media company, and the ins and outs of there's a scandal and like how they handle it and the politics of it all and that kind of stuff. But it's so well done because the most scenes are just either two people in a room talking or five people in a room talking or somebody on the phone. It's all just talking. But between the cinematography and the screenwriting and the acting, it's so compelling. And it doesn't need to be this big flashy thing in order to create and elicit these types of emotions. As much as of a huge MCU Marvel fan I am, and do think there is a lot of value beyond the pretty colors and all of that in those movies. I can definitely understand why people have that type of opinion of those things. And Succession as a show is just the in terms of good movies and TV, that is it's the complete opposite end of the spectrum on what good cinema, if we want to call it that, good cinema could be. And they're so different because so little actually happens. And I mean, even plot wise, like not to give any spoilers, but this season, the last season ended with one character holding a press conference and kind of dropping an unexpected bomb. And then and now this season, I think it's only the third episode that's airing tonight. They're just dealing with the immediate aftermath of that. And so the past two episodes have just been like the actual time after. I don't know if it was like 1-to-1, like the actual 2 hours, but the few days after that, and they're just dealing with this one thing. So nothing is really happening. And they're, this powerful family is, the conversations they're having, it's just dripping with subtext and all of this stuff. And it's creating a story aside from the story that's being told, I guess is a good way to put it. And so I would definitely, I don't know if you would love a Squid Game. I definitely think you'd be interested in it, but Succession is definitely one you've got to get into.
All righty. Thank you on that one.
Yeah, definitely. So go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. No, I was gonna say, I'm like, I'll probably get around it eventually because my best friend Josh, he's like, hey, have you watched Climax yet? I'm like, no. And I'm like, I have it still queued in my Amazon. That's about like, I forget what the plot is, but they're all just tripping and all these like weird horror stuff comes out of like nowhere. I just with me and like TV and movies, it's like the last movie I did see was the Halloween Kills, because obviously being a big Michael Myers fan, but I even with books, I have a hard time disciplining and get focused on like something. So I haven't really watched like maybe a TV series since Bates Motel, like 6 years ago. You know what I mean? Yeah. And now diving into the Chucky series, and I'm like, all right, because I keep hearing about Black Mirror and all these others.
Oh my god, dude!
Or Stranger
You cannot
Things.
be a horror writer without having seen Black Mirror.
Yeah.
After this, whatever you have planned for today, cancel it and go watch Black Mirror. And I'm obviously being facetious, but my my suggestion to anybody who has not seen Black Mirror, there is, I believe, 5 seasons, and then there's the Bandersnatch, the interactive thing, which is really cool, but is definitely a different type of thing. So there's 5 seasons. They Netflix released the first 3 seasons, I think, or the first 2 seasons. So and it's an anthology series, so they're not connected, but as you go on, there are callbacks and stuff. But so I always would suggest that take the first 3 seasons and watch all of those episodes first. Okay. The order doesn't matter too much, but watch the seasons 1 through 3 first. Then watch season 4 and again, the season itself doesn't matter too much, but make sure that the last episode of that season is the last one you watch, because that's the one that has callbacks to the rest of the season. And then the fifth season was meh. And I think they're coming back for another one. I'm hoping that they pick it up, but like it just groundbreaking in the Black Mirror gave me a completely different view of what sci-fi could be. And I almost don't, I like to call it tech-fi, because when I think sci-fi, I think of more of the fantasy side, and having it be backed by science, but really the fantasy is the focus. Especially before technology, what it is, and now that we have this level of technology and where it's going is a little bit more easily predictable. That's what Black Mirror does, is take the technology that we have and extrapolate it based on what is realistic. And so that's that makes it so good. And then there's an Amazon that did their own version based off of Philip K. Dick's work. And their show, what's it called? Electric Dreams. Same kind of thing. Anthology series, just this tech-fi, sci-fi type stuff. And oh man, great stuff. And it's been my contention, and I've said this in probably every episode, so viewers, you'll have to hear it again. Mark 1 for comment if you've heard this before. There you go. But I will fight to this is a hill I'm willing to die on, that we are in an age where there absolutely is, not in everything, of course, but in the top tier of cinema, whether TV and movies, there is absolutely as much literary value and substance in those types, in like a Breaking Bad, a Game of Thrones, I'm blanking on movies, but they're out there. Shows like Succession. These types of things, they have the level of whether it be social commentary or whatever it is. It's not just mindless TV. And while there is plenty of mindless TV, and I'm not even hating on it, Jersey Shore was one of my favorite shows, and not just because I'm from Jersey. But some of the Netflix reality shows, The Circle, Too Hot to Handle, I can't get enough of them. They're I used to call them my guilty pleasures, but fuck it, they're just good.
I have one of those Total Divas, the WWE series.
Yeah.
On E, then a Total Bellas. I'm like, I don't know what it is about this. I'm like, maybe because I'm familiar with these people, but it's like, why am I watching a reality show about, the Bella twins and everything else? Or every other wrestler, and they get their male counterparts on it. I'm like, you look miserable. And I think and I think there's where the comedy comes in. Because you see one wrestler kind of like, he's not on it anymore. I don't know if they're still doing it. But I'm like, man, Dean Ambrose looks fucking miserable. Like, it's like, dude, I just want to be out and about. Why are you putting cameras on me? Because my wife's on the show?
Yeah, all of the I'm not familiar with that one specifically, but yeah, all those kinds of just there's something to reality TV, and as long as I think it's the obsession people get with it, and the wanting to mimic what's in that is harmful. But there's something so compelling about just watching other people's stories. And I don't think there's I've come to stop being ashamed of liking reality TV, because first of all, when I'm not watching reality TV, I'm watching philosophy YouTube videos at 2x speed. So fuck off if you're gonna judge me. But I guarantee
something to turn your brain off.
Yeah, I guarantee you I watch higher stuff that you wouldn't even be able to understand. Not you, but I'm just saying. Generally.
Yeah, I got you.
And so yeah, fuck it, I love it. And I just I don't know what it is about it, but and so that's not the stuff that has this literary value, of course. But again, like Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul universe, the Game of Thrones, even even in the MCU, despite all the, again, the pretty colors and all that stuff, there is a lot going on that I don't think most people are aware of. And like I was never into the comics, so whenever I see the movie, I've got to go right on. New Rockstars is one of the channels that will break down every little bit and piece of everything
Yeah.
Marvel. And there's just a lot there, and it adds so much to what is already an enjoyable piece of content. Then you add the analysis and all that, and just makes it better.
Very nice.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit about the publishing process, because you said you were trying to go through a publisher, and then you decided to self-publish. And
Okay.
I'd like to write a book one day. I've got a lot of, as you can probably tell, I've got a lot of
Yeah.
ideas just floating around, but they're not quite. I'm not at the place where they're organized enough where I could put them into a book. But that is a goal of mine. And so I'm always interested to hear what it was like, not just from the conception of the story to getting the words on paper, but once you have that story, and once you have that booked, once you have that book, what was it like for you to try to get it published, and then how did you decide to go independently?
When I felt like I was done, going back to the original of the 618 pages. I was like, okay, I believe this is done. I reached out to, I'm not gonna mention the publisher because I do forget it, but I knew they were located in Jersey, and they're like, okay, submit it and we'll review it. And I'm like, all right. I think I got a call back later, maybe within a week or a day or two. They're like, we accepted it. And then another call saying, hey, you're 100,000 words over. We have to charge you like double. I'm like, because it was like $3,000. It was so crazy. I was like, all right. I guess for editing, marketing, printing costs maybe. And I'm like, well, I'm just not interested in it. They're like, okay, we'll give you the original and blah, 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 this and that. I'm like, all right, I'll put a down payment. I actually put a down payment. I was looking for a second job. Therefore, I could pay the monthly fee because it was like $300 for 12 months. And I was like, I don't have $300 to give to you. So, and I was like, hey, can you hold on to it and hold on to it? And the representative was just pushy and pushy and pushing. I'm like, you know what? Fuck this shit. I don't need it. I want my deposit back. I'm going to take a different route. I'm going to do the self-publishing. And I think all this was around 2018, or maybe 2017 with that actual publisher. And so I went back into the story. I actually took his advice of splitting it up, and I cut it where I was like, okay, that seems reasonable, and cut it and just worked on it. I found an editor last year over in the UK, Chelsea. She's absolutely wonderful. We communicated back and forth, and it was quite interesting seeing my work being dissected and maliciously assaulted. Like, there's all these red lines. I'm like, I guess I'm not a great writer as I thought I was. So going back to keeping your ego in check. All right, she kept my ego in check, and I told her that. I'm like, she wanted a review. I'm like, this is what happened. She's like, your comment on my page is one of the best ones because you were vulnerable and it shows like an emotion to it. I'm like, well, I thought it was good. I guess I wasn't that good, and you're kind of working with me and everything. So I get it back. I rewrote it. I sent it to her, and she's like, that looks a hell of a lot better. And then I was like, all right, it's time to publish. Let's see what Amazon has to offer. I was looking at tutorials and seeing how to do the cover. The cover is a daytime photo that I turned night, and I just added a moon in there. The symbol on the back it represents the story. So Max sees this symbol eventually right
here.
Yeah.
I'll put that
right
on the screen.
right before he enters the dream world, but he's been seeing this hexagon beforehand. So it was like I enjoyed the process of building something from scratch and not have any input, and building headers, which is basically the 6 sides with a number in it, and then a little bracket, and then figuring out how to like do all this and look at different texts and look at different tutorials. And I'm like, I love this better than someone doing it themselves. I rather build something I can appreciate, that I want full control over. And I think that's what I found comfort in the self-publishing route. And then you can set your own prices and everything. And I'm like, oh, this is neat. You know, the getting the word out is probably the most difficult of, you know, doing a self-publishing instead of the traditional where they could do it for you. But I kind of look at it both ways. There's benefits to both, but you know, you do the self-publish or you do the traditional route, and you're not guaranteed book sales. You're not guaranteed book sales over here either. Someone might be interested, someone might not be interested. So it's kind of like a gamble both ways. Instead of blowing money and trying to, you know, giving the traditional what they want, where I could just like, okay, I could run an ad like 5 days a week, you know, spend my own money, find my target audience and everything else. I make videos, make graphics, you know, if anybody who buys it, you know, yo, here, just throw it out on social media. Because I could tell you this, I have sold more books through talking than I did advertising. I think once they're intrigued, you know, after, you know, hey, I'm an author, and like, oh, what'd you write? Blah, 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 this and that. And tell them the brief summary, and they're like, okay, I'll check it out. And then they come back to me and like, hey, can you sign it?
Oh, cool.
So I think more, I was like, I think I have a skill for verbal marketing than I do like, you know, here's a product. Do you want this? Do you need this? You know, and just communicating. I thoroughly enjoyed the self-publishing, and I have ideas for the second installment, but I would need outside help, which I know a photographer. She does, I forget, these boudoir kind of like photographs, whatever, those revealing kind of.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the arc of the story a little bit, where, not to give it away, but a woman seducing people, you know, and then shit happens to them. Not to give too much of it away. So I'm like, okay, I don't mind my art skills, but that's something I can't do. So I need outside help, and I could give someone else a platform too.
Exactly.
I was like, oh, that's a good photographer. She's wonderful. And I'm like, all right, let's showcase her. You know, I don't mind working with other people. Is, you know, what helps me helps you, and what helps you helps me.
Yeah, rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah.
Definitely. Cool. So we've been going for a little over an hour now. And I definitely am. I mean, I could keep going, but for the benefit of our listeners, I think this this is a great conversation, and has really shed a light on what I think people can expect. The one more question I wanted to dig a little deeper into the symbol on the back. Does it have a specific meaning, or was it just something that designed that looked cool?
I was working with that shape for a while, where I put an hourglass in it, and then the hourglass in the middle of the hourglass had a diamond. I'm like, all right. And it just kept sticking with me. And I'm like, well, in later installments, you find out what it means, because honestly, right now, I don't know what it means. And I think that's just the beauty of it. So I kind of like was looking at like all different symbols. I'm like, all right, I like the 6 because it almost represents the devil in the way. If you actually look at the bottom of it, it's a inverted crucifix. And then the sides I just kind of made up. And I was like, wow, that's an interesting symbol. And I'm like, hell, let's use it. Let's be a little different. Because I try to get other authors take on this. Instead of putting the brief summary on the back, why don't I put it on the inside and just have that symbol? Like, what the hell is that? And then you try to flip through it and like, oh, there's a synapses right there. And
Mhm. And that's
let
an interesting approach, because the episode that just came out, it's Halloween today. I don't know when this is gonna come out necessarily, but the IDRYB 07, I believe it was, it was called I now Riding My Wings of Faith, and it was about a woman who used her fear of flying to overcome or to develop a way to overcome fears and obstacles in general. And on the back of the book, it just said, "Thank you for reading," and a bunch of contact information. And so with the segment of this show being called "Reading the Back of the Book," I was like, well, I didn't read the book,
yeah.
and I don't know what's in it. And so to me, in that example, I was like, that's not really a good way to market, because if people are, and again, I'm always, I'm still imagining, being physically in like a Barnes and Noble or something, because there was a description
Yeah.
on the website. Same with yours, but I was just like, okay, if I don't see anything, I'm just going to put it down and go to the next book that catches my eye. But with yours, because it is a symbol I'm not familiar with, that is a good way to get me to open the book. That is absolutely something that I would at least want to know, what does this mean? And then knowing that it's not a reference symbol or established symbol, but it's actually something that you have designed. I would take that and run with it, and that be your symbol, because having a logo, getting a logo can sometimes be the
Oh
hardest
yeah.
thing, and so to have that is really, really cool. So I would put that everywhere on everything. I'd make
Oh
that your profile picture.
yeah. It was kind of interesting because like I said, my intentions were to lure you in. I'm like, okay, well, what's this about if you're not gonna, you know, put a brief summary on the back? And I'm like, I looked at it from the pros like you did, if it were in Barnes and Nobles and everything else and all these other bookstores, and I'm like, and he flip it at the back, I'm like, well, what the hell is this about? And then the thought was trying to get the consumer to open the book
Open the book, yeah.
and just like, oh, that's interesting. He has the blub over there, and I'm like, cool. And I'm like, it kind of flips through it a little bit more and see, because the symbol is in the book itself, and then you just see sprinkles of it as the title header as like, inside the hexagon is 1 2 blah 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 and so forth. So you get like, it's like, okay, where's this going to come into play? And it comes directly at you in the beginning, then directly down the line where I do actually describe the symbol, and then you're like, okay, that's a cool play on things. I can actually see it now instead of trying to visualize what he was trying to tell me in the book. So it was just, and I plan on doing it for the rest of this. All these Mac stories, just having a symbol on the back. I was influenced by old progressive rock music and everything, where you just see the cover, they have like their little logo, like kind of that small, or don't have anything at all. Even on the back, don't even have a track list. And I'm like, this is kind of interesting. I look at that as a work of art, and yeah, and try not to distract the reader from like large print and everything. I just say, here's the trees, here's the moon, here's the other side of the photo and everything. I kind of looked at it like an art piece, the bare minimum.
Yeah,
But
well, I think
it makes it so big.
yeah, I think you definitely hit that on the head, because it's that's the first thing when I saw it. I was like, "Ooh, what's this?" And getting someone to physically open the book is probably one of the hardest steps. Once they've got the book open, then they're at least enough interested enough to see what's up. And then as long as it doesn't suck, then you probably got a sale there. So that I think in comparing the two approaches to get someone to open the book, I think the key there was having something in place of what they were expecting, the synopsis on the back of the book, and replacing it with something that would make them want to open the book, and not just putting the synopsis inside the book, hoping that they are going to go looking for it. I think that is is key. And I definitely think it will cause a lot of people to open the book.
Yeah. That's what I was hoping to get, but being a self-publisher, it's like, all right, you don't even have that on the bag if someone wants to resell it. That was the intention of it. If it ever makes stores, then it's still the intention of it. I was like, I want to like lure you in and create a little mystery behind it and make you open it. Make you kind of curious, like, what is this? Like,
one day you're going to see somebody tag you in a post where they've got that symbol tattooed on them.
I mean, that would be, I would probably go to that person when you want me to sign it too, and then you could get my signature tattooed next to it. I was yeah.
Awesome. Well, this definitely has, it definitely didn't go in the direction that I thought it would, being a specifically religious piece. And not that that's good or bad, but I think this has gone in a really cool direction, and I'm definitely intrigued, and I hope the viewers are as well. I think you have a very it's not so unique, but or rather I should say it shouldn't be so unique, but the perspective you have is becoming increasingly more unique, and that I think really speaks to the perspective from which you're coming at this, and that people can probably expect a very realistic interpretation of and believable story of what happens to Max, because of the way that it seems that you view the world and you view these things. So very interesting. So I definitely am marking this one down. So last thing, I didn't get a firm answer out of you, but the worst horror movie, and not like good bad, but the worst horror movie you've ever
seen. The worst horror movie. Now I'm trying to. I mean, I won't call it worst. It's kind of more recent, like the recent adaptation of Child's Play, where it's all electronic. I turned that off within like 20 minutes. I was like, this fucking sucks. And like my buddy's like, I thought it was interesting. I'm like, dude, come on, like it doesn't have the soul of a serial killer. It's just malfunction and killing people. I was like,
that's interesting. Do you think the cartoon aspect, because now that I'm thinking about it, you don't really, I don't really, at least as far as I know, animation and horror. I mean, I'm thinking like there's Coraline from what, like 2010, that was animated, but you don't really see a lot of animation horror. And unless I'm just not seeing it. I wonder if that had anything to do with it.
I don't know. Like I mean, the movie was like lifelike based. It's just the way they approached it, and I understand how they approached it. I'm like, it's just like, all right, this turned me off. I wouldn't say it's bad. There's probably someone out there, and I'm like, no, man, it was a good movie. I'm like, all right, whatever. Watch Thanos: The Hands of Time, or Hanos: The Hands of Time. I can't remember what that was called. My buddy told me about that. He's like, I was like, was there any? I asked him the same question. Was there ever like, this movie really pissed me off because I didn't understand it, and I watched the whole damn thing, and I watched and I eventually did watch it like once after he told me about it, watching an old Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode, and they were covering this. I can't remember if it was Hano or Thanos, the Hands of Time, Hands of Doom, something like that. And I'm like in the middle of it, I'm like, this sucks. Like I was like, I get what he's saying now. Like this movie's so like, well, what the hell's going on? Is there an actual plot? You know, I I don't know. Like I'm actually trying to think, because I kind of look for the good in some of that. Like some, you know, if you would say Blair Witch 2, like Blair Witch 2 is not that great, but it has a great story and a great premise. It was just poorly executed.
Like so
And
many other things, right?
yeah, I just think there's good ideas and it's just poorly executed. I don't think
Yeah.
there's too much of a bad idea. It's just, how do you do with that idea?
Yeah, and I guess the bad ideas don't, you know, with the terrible movies we see, that you
Yeah.
know, what's not, you know, what's not greenlit. So, very cool. Well, I mean, Jared, this was awesome. I am super happy we got to connect. And
Oh, same here.
if there is anything you want to plug, the book, any other books, your social media, stuff like that, please, the floor is yours.
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at the other I13. And yeah, the Serpent of Eden is only available on Amazon. It's on Kindle, it's on paperback. Pick your poison on that, which you feel comfortable reading it from, and I hope you enjoy it, you know. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, again, this was a great conversation. Very excited to release this one. Again, I don't know exactly when it'll be out, but I will definitely let you know. But thank you for coming on the platform.
Oh, thank you for having me. This has been really fun. I love it.
And hey, if we want to do, you know, you said you, oh, that was the other thing. You said you changed your name, the name of your YouTube channel from The Other Eye, but you didn't say what you changed it to.
Oh, to just Jared S. Idol.
Oh, just
Yeah.
have your name.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, just have my name.
and
Yeah, check
I'll
it.
I'll have all that stuff linked below.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, you definitely do have a presence. So you know, I would be more than happy to collab and do some stuff and help you get the ball rolling. And you know, I'm a new YouTuber myself. Even I had an old podcast that I was doing for a while. You could see the audio, but I just threw up the audio version with just a still image on this channel, and I just left it there. But yeah. It's definitely, you've definitely got a presence for it. And so we definitely got to connect on some of that. But until then, thank you so much for coming on. Again, it is Jared S. Idol, and we have been talking about the Serpent of Eden. Take care. Peace. And thank you so much to Jared S. Idol talking about his book, The Serpent of Eden. So that went pretty well, if I do say so myself. It clearly was not some religious thing. Again, which would have been fine, but not like we haven't been there before. And it was interesting because even though we didn't really talk about the book itself too much, like the events of the book too much. And we were connected through a political, you know, a political means. We definitely talked about that a little bit, but I find it interesting how that's not really what dominated the conversation. And the fact that we were able to talk about, you know, how the elements of the book, where they came from, and those kinds of things. And again, this is the type of conversation that I'm looking for, because I'm not looking for, and I don't think you are looking for, someone to come on here to try to sell you their book. And Jared did a good job of not really trying to do that. And not that others haven't done well. And I'm going to stop doing that. If I say something nice about somebody, it's not that I'm saying anything bad about anybody else. I'm just saying something nice. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop with this disclaimer of everything I say. Now I'm not going to say that, you know, my previous authors that I've had on are not great, because they were, and you know that I think that. So when I say that I want bigger authors, you get it. So Jared did a very good job of showing us who he is. And he shared with me that was his first time doing any kind of interview like that. So if he hadn't told me, I wouldn't have guessed. So I'm definitely interested in diving into more of those things that we have in common. You know, he's a drummer, I'm a drummer. He's a Tim Cass fan, I'm a Tim Cass fan. He is into psychedelics, I'm into psychedelics, and not so much that I am, you know, tripping balls all the time. I got a lot to do now, and even on my weekends now, it's filled with doing interviews and editing and stuff. So I don't really have the time to do that, but I wish I did. And then he working for a firearms distributor. I have been recently more interested in that that area of things, and so he seems like somebody that I hopefully you know, we will see again. And because of that, that is what above anything else would make me want to pick up his book. And you know, he mentioned it himself. There's a lot of people who aren't necessarily really into the horror genre, but talked to him about it, heard what he had to say, gave his book a chance, and liked it. And not only liked it, but came back and asked for him to sign it. I should have asked how many books he has had, how many books he's sold. That's not like asking a woman how old she is, right? That's a fair question. But I think, you know, just for the context of like, I don't even know, you know, for all I know, this guy sold 100 copies, could have sold 10,000. I would have no clue. So I think that's something to start asking, just for the context of how well other people like the book. And it's definitely not a one-to-one comparison. Oh, well, if a lot of people like this book, it must be good. That is not at all what I'm saying. But if a book is good, typically a lot of people will read it. So in terms of the story itself, the main character, Max, he seems to be somebody who is you know, living that stereotypical successful life, and then these events that happen to him, again, it seems like there's some sort of internal turmoil mixed with the life that he's living. That's what I got from it. And that's a story that I would definitely be interested in. If it was a show, I would already be watching it. And I guess, I don't know. I don't really have too much analysis to say about that conversation. It was a pretty straightforward conversation. I think we touched on a lot of different aspects. And I think he's a very what you see is what you get kind of guy. I don't think, not to say that he isn't deep, but I think because he's an open book, I think because he is comfortable putting it out there, and this whole notion of keeping your ego in check, modesty, humility, I think it was very easy for me interviewing him to get to the heart of what I was really asking without having to dive too deep. I think we were kind of on the same page. There's another book pun for you. We were kind of on the same page for a lot of it, and the questions I was asking, very simply, he just answered them well. So again, I don't have a lot of analysis here. I think if you liked that conversation, if you agree with the political stuff that he said, then you agree with it. If you don't agree with the political stuff, but you like what he said about the book, then you'll probably like the book, because he doesn't seem to be too political in the book itself. And I mean, sometimes it really is, it just what it is. It is what it is. Sometimes it just is what it is. And Jared seems like a very straightforward, genuine person. And I don't think that there is, again, much to pick apart. I think we got a very good picture of who this guy is and what kind of work he is doing and what he, talking about pulling in the different aspects of, music and psychedelics and horror and putting those together, getting the, if the book is anything like the conversation I just had with him, then that's something I would be interested in. And I think it's just that simple. So that I don't have any grand words of wisdom for this one. I just have a, just a gratefulness that we had a cool conversation. Grateful that the new lights are looking kind of nice, if you didn't notice. What do you think about them? Give me a comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, ring the bell so you never miss an episode or a clip. I'm trying a lot of new things, so you're definitely going to want to check out whatever is coming out to see, whatever gets more engagement is going to help shape what kind of things I continue to do. Now, the podcast is not going anywhere, but with the other stuff, I, whatever is working, I want to do more of, and I'm not going to be doing anything that I don't like doing. So it's just what I like doing do you guys like? I'll give you more of it. So ring the bell, make sure you like, comment, let me know what you're thinking. Let me know from episode to episode, from clip to clip. What do you like about what I've done before? What did I miss? What do you want to know? All of these things, this is, remember, this is an IDRYB community. It's not just me. I am just the host of the podcast, but this is our community. This is for you. John, Rick, and Paula. If there's anybody out there, John, Rick, or Paula, I'm talking to you. I'm talking to all of you. This is our platform, and I need your help to build it. I'm doing my part. And so you guys, let me know what you think. Again, comment, like, subscribe, ring the bell. I am on social media at IDRYB Lutch. That's IDRYB LUTCH. And this has been another episode of I Didn't Read Your Book. Thank you for coming again, and I'll see you next time.